This is City Focus, the podcast from the League of Oregon Cities, where we explore the issues that matter to cities across Oregon.
On this episode of City Focus, I'm joined in the studio by Sean O'Day and Brenda Wilson. Sean is the Executive Director of the Mid-Willamette Valley Council of Governments, and Brenda is the Executive Director of the Lane Council of Governments. The primary purpose of a Council of Governments is to position their regions for prosperity. They do this by ensuring that local governments within their boundaries have the resources they need to serve their residents. They also serve as conduits for federal and state resources, ensuring their regions receive funding for economic development, public infrastructure planning and construction, as well as social services. By serving as a convener, councils of government can facilitate intergovernmental cooperation among local governments to identify and solve regional problems that span across cities and county boundaries. I'm your host, Denise Nanke. Join me as I chat with Sean and Brenda about the vital role councils of government play in Oregon. Welcome to both of you.
Thank you.
Thanks for being here. Thanks for being on the show. So we're here to talk about COGs.
Go ahead, Brenda.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Sean. Councils of governments. There are over 700 councils of governments throughout the United States. And it's really a way for public agencies to come together, collaborate, and solve common problems throughout a region. And there are several councils of governments in Oregon, and we work in the background. We help our members get things done, basically.
So typically, who's a member of a COG?
Well, it varies. So I have 35 members. Mm-hmm. Lane County, all 12 incorporated cities, 4 utilities, 6 school districts, a transit district, a community college, a port, and several special districts.
Wow.
We have 42 members in our council of governments, which includes county governments, city governments, and in our case, we have a tribal government that's also a member.
Okay, so the role of the COG then within that large group of collaborators, stakeholders, is it a facilitator, a hub, a convener? What is it that you guys do?
Sure. So one of the ways I like to describe what a council of governments does is to analogize it to a chamber of commerce.
Okay.
So we are, for local governments, what a chamber of commerce is for small business. We help, as Brenda said, bring all these units of local government together under one umbrella, help share best practices, coordinate efforts on regional issues, those issues that are spanning more than one boundary. Maybe a particular part of our region is experiencing an issue like homelessness.
Mm-hmm.
And you did a show on homelessness,
yes,
which talked a little bit about the Council of Governments,
right,
my Council of Governments' role in that issue. Where we've got this issue that spans multiple different jurisdictions. We provide the mechanism to facilitate that intergovernmental response, sharing of information, coordination of efforts to really get at those regional issues.
Okay. So, yeah, you spoke about homelessness. We did do a show on that in Mid-Willamette Valley. Brenda, I'm expecting probably in your neck of the woods, too, you've got similar issues to what we're dealing with up here in the Mid-Willamette Valley. Anything that kind of pops to your head? Something specific that you guys have had to deal with?
Well, we're pretty big in broadband. And so another thing the councils of governments do is they help fill a need. Mm-hmm. And so in our particular region, our public agencies were really lacking in broadband, high-speed internet connection. And so we stepped into that role and built the broadband hub for our entire region. And so, that was just a need that we found. And it was an issue at that time, not only for access, but for economic development as well. Mm-hmm. And because we had really great partners, we've been able to build a huge, strong consortium that has resulted in the city of Eugene being named a gigabit city. Technology Association of Oregon is very active in our region, and we sort of built off of that. And then using that high-speed broadband connecting to firehouses and schools and everything. But we've also built the Lane COG's telephone system on the back of that broadband system as well. So, and again, just to provide services to our region. So it's not just the collaboration and bringing together, it's mm-hmm. providing those services that are needed in a region where it didn't make sense for one public agency to do that on its own because there's economies of scale. And
yeah.
we both do those types of things, providing those types of services.
So you're both in more metropolitan areas. Are COGs more of a, I don't want to say critical or a force, but in more rural areas where you said, economy of scale as far as collaboration coming together, smaller entities coming together to sort of amplify their own voices? Is that in the bailiwick of a COG?
I think you're right on track. Yeah, that's right. And you do tend to see them more around urban centers within the state. We have 5 councils of government plus Metro. Metro began as a council of government, but then went through an evolution where it became its own independently elected body. For many of us, instead, we are created by an intergovernmental agreement among the participating jurisdictions where each jurisdiction or a certain percentage of them will have a representative that serves on our board of directors that then oversees and guides our activities. And each COG is a little bit different. We're all, as Brenda said, really trying to identify the needs of our region and meet those needs. And each region has a little bit different, need set, problem set that the Council of Governments is trying to solve. But you do tend to see them centered around urban areas within the state. So here within the Mid-Willamette Valley, of course, Salem is our largest city member. Lane Council of Governments, you've got Eugene. We also have the Oregon Cascades West Council of Governments, where the major metropolitan areas there are Corvallis and Albany. Rogue Valley, which has Grants Pass, and I think Metro is Medford is part of them. And then we have Central Oregon Cities Intergovernmental Council, where it's Bend and Redmond, also forming the main base of that Council of Governments. And I think that's largely because these issues where you see regional issues, and again by regional we mean issues that are spanning more than one jurisdiction's boundary, really start to develop when you see urban masses being developed and being created in an area. Then you start to see issues such as homelessness, pollution, a need for greater land use collaboration, as well as, like Brenda said, providing services to those municipalities where it doesn't make sense just for one of them to provide that service on their own.
Okay, so we are right in the middle, right in the thick, as we're sitting here recording this broadcast, of the 2019 legislative session. And there's all kinds of things that are happening fast and furious. From the COG's perspective in your area, Brenda, things that come down that may be difficult for cities to deal with if there's an emergency clause on something, things that have to be enacted right away. Is there a role for the COG in assisting cities with sort of dealing with a mandate that has come down from the state?
Absolutely, aside from letting our members know about those legislative concepts, because a lot of our smaller cities don't have the staff, they don't have the bandwidth in order to track those. And so we'll do that. And our COG also helps our members become engaged, whether it's the city administrators or the CEOs of those public agencies or our elected officials. We help them engage in issues that are important to them. And so, issues that not only were important in my region, but across the state, like building codes, there was an issue. Recreational immunity was an issue, which we sort of gathered our elected officials together, helped them understand what the issue was, and assisted them if they wanted to participate in the legislative process. And so once those bills pass, then we also try to assist. And it can be either providing information or providing actual services. So when a new requirement comes down, for instance, the legalization of marijuana, right, and the collection of that tax. One of the things that our members have been talking to us as a COG about is collecting those taxes for them.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Just the logistics of doing that.
The logistics of that, because some of our smaller cities, they've never done anything like that before. It's a little difficult. COG's a perfect organization in which to step in and do that on a wide scale.
I could see where that would be very helpful.
Yeah, where we can combine a bunch of small needs that on their own wouldn't justify the creation of a permanent position within a city or a county. If we can aggregate that work into one position, then often you'll find those positions being housed at a council of governments. So, for example, with my council of governments, we provide land use planning services to our smaller jurisdictions. We have 4 land use planners on staff. Each of them serve 4 to 5 different cities, because on their own, each of those cities would not have enough development to generate enough work to hire a full-time planner. But we're able to do that, aggregate that work, house it under the COG. It's far more cost-effective for those smaller cities to meet that need. And speaking of legislation, Brenda mentioned it. the building codes.
Yeah.
You have an episode on that.
We do.
As well.
Yeah.
About the efforts by some in the state to prohibit local governments from being able to contract for building inspection services.
Yes.
Should that be successful, which we certainly hope it's not, we want to preserve those local governments' abilities to choose to use who they want to provide that service. But if that legislation was successful, and now a building inspector had to be a public employee, again, there's not going to be enough building work being generated in these smaller communities to justify them hiring their own building official. Instead, they could come to us. We could create a building code program, building inspection program, and they could then use their COG to conduct those building inspection services in their communities. So it's kind of another example of how we could fill a gap or a need that might be created by legislation.
Okay, I can see where, again, with these smaller cities where you don't have the bandwidth and the personnel to do that. Kind of changing gears just a little bit as far as, like I said, we're dealing with the 2019 legislative session right now. Is there anything that you see on the horizon as we kind of crest the hill to the other side of this? Anything that is sort of on your radar that is concerning to you, is encouraging to you? Anything that you see that as you're kind of peering over the horizon that is on your radar right now?
Well, those things that we're watching are things that are important to our members.
Mm-hmm.
And so, several of, we are the Metropolitan Planning Organization. I know, Sean, your organization is too. So something that's important to my members that they've voiced interest in is the ability for local government to set their own speed. We've had a couple of fatalities because of speed in our region. And so that's something that's important. So it's important to our members, not necessarily to the COG, but it's important to our members. So those are the types of things that we're looking at.
What does that mean then? What role would the COG play if a small city says, we've got our own traffic data that says we need to be able to sort of be a little bit nimble to change and let this adjust for our needs? How do you advocate for them on that issue?
Well, in Lane County, Lane COG is the organization that collects that data. And so we collect it, we aggregate it, we provide it in a useful format so that people can understand. We actually coordinate the county-wide safety coalition.
Okay.
And so we're working with our smaller agency and actually our large agencies too, the county as well as Eugene and Springfield, on how to address issues of safety on the roadway because of speed and other things as well. But we're also making sure we're providing the information to our members so that they can become engaged. And if one of those bills passes, then we will assist our members in understanding what it would take and what they need to do in order to adjust the speed or set the speed in their own jurisdictions.
Okay. How about you? You're in the capital city. You've got a little bit different vantage point, perhaps, that you're just down the street from the Marble House. So
Right, sure. Well, first, our legislative agenda, we support the League's priorities with regard to local control and empowering local voices to make local choices. And we play an augmentation role in helping the League staff as they're working various preemptive legislation, trying to defeat preemptive legislation, in providing our region's voice to that and our story, our unique story to the issues. And again, building codes is a good example.
Yeah.
Certainly, in fact, I think the folks you interviewed came right out of my region.
City of Aurora.
Yep, the city of Aurora. And that is one of our top legislative priorities, is to watch that bill and do our best to preserve local control. I think within the state, we may have more jurisdictions that contract for building code services than some of our councils of government. I'm not sure how many in Lane do, but I know we have at least 4 to 5. And so it's a big issue for us to preserve that local choice and who they're using for building code inspections. There's also been a couple pieces of legislation that have come up that are specific to our region related to transportation, a bridge over the Willamette, the creation of a bridge district, as well as some legislation that is being discussed that would enable councils of government to take on emergency management planning function should counties within their within a COG choose to have the COG do so. And so we're monitoring all of that. And a lot of that legislation we're neutral on. We've not taken a position as a Council of Governments, but we're certainly monitoring it because, as Brenda said, should it pass, then we'll be at the ready to help our members deal with the consequences of that and implement the legislature's decision with those pieces of legislation.
So it's quite obvious to me, just sitting here listening to both of you talk about your respective COGs, that they are essential within the region. So before we wrap up today, I want to give each of you a chance to kind of shout out what's going well, kind of give a little bit of a rah-rah to your COG and how important it is to the region, and kind of fill our listeners in on a closing thought from you about why the work you do is important to your region.
Two things that we have going on right now that sort of jump to the front of my mind are our transit district. We're a one county COG, which is really unusual. Most COGs span counties, and we're one county, but Lane County is the size of Connecticut, so that's good. Our transit district really wanted to focus its service delivery within their service boundary. But the service boundary is really the metro area. And so there was a real need to provide transit service in rural Lane County. And who better to pick that up than us? And so we are working on becoming the rural transit provider for all of rural Lane County. And that's a situation where there was a need. There really wasn't another organization that was ready or willing to pick that up. We're the perfect choice because our members are all of Lane County. And another thing that just happened, and this seems like a small thing, but it's really what COGs do. I have a small city member who suddenly found themselves without a city administrator. And, city administrators in small cities, they do everything. And to be without a city administrator is really difficult. So we have assigned one of our staff members as their interim city administrator to help them with the search for a permanent replacement. And that's something else that a COG can do. Sean mentioned those planning services, and those are ongoing services. But we also have the ability, because we're nimble and flexible enough, to step in an emergency and assist our members. And so those are just two things that I can think of right now. And there are many, many things that we do every week that I think help our regions be successful.
Yeah, and as your question suggests, Denise, every Council of Governments is structured a little bit differently and has a little bit different set of services that it provides, because it's really set up to meet the needs of each of its region, and each region, of course, has a different set of needs. We, as I think about what we do and the big impact we have, we help strengthen local government. We provide a whole host of services that help cities and counties and other units of local government function more efficiently and more responsively to the residents that they serve. We provide city manager recruitment services. We help cities with the evaluation of their chief executive officers, such as a city manager or a city attorney. We provide goal-setting services. We also do a lot of training and provide technical assistance to help those units of local government function well. In addition to that, we serve as a conduit for federal dollars in the areas of economic development, small business lending, and transportation planning. Brenda had mentioned that both of our councils of governments are metropolitan planning organizations, which is a federal designation that once a community reaches a certain size, it then becomes eligible for federal highways dollars to go towards regional transportation projects. And often it's the councils of government that help staff and work that process by which those dollars get allocated. And all told, between our transportation program area, our economic development area, and our small business lending, we help place over $47 million of federal resources in our region and help create over 120 jobs just last year. So we have a tremendous economic impact because we can bring those units of government together under one umbrella to work collectively in a coordinated, strategic way to solve our region's problems and to make good use of those federal resources that we're able to get because we're able to bring people together under one regional government.
I want to thank you both for coming in. There's a lot of good information there. Again, it seems like every time we talk about what's going on with the COGs, there's always more to talk about. So I'm sure I'll have you back again to discuss as things go on. And I know it's fluid and there's always things changing. And like I said, we're only halfway through the session. So anything can happen.
That's right.
So once again, I want to thank my guests, Sean O'Day, Executive Director of the Mid-Willamette Valley COG, and Brenda Wilson, Executive Director of Lane COG. Thank you both for taking some time and coming in and sharing your stories about your COGs with us.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Whether it's to provide information technology services to local governments, facilitate the allocation of federal transportation dollars in their regions, or serve as a regional planning authority, councils of government help fill the gaps and truly demonstrate how local governments working together can accomplish a whole lot more than they can on their own. Thanks for listening to this episode of City Focus. Be sure to check out the show notes for links to both the Lane COG and the Mid-Willamette Valley COG, as well as to my City Focus podcast focusing on third-party building inspection preservation. My name is Denise Nanke, and I'm the host and producer of City Focus, a podcast from the League of Oregon Cities. The League is a governmental entity formed to work with our members to help local government better serve the citizens of Oregon. LOC strives to be the go-to place for Oregon cities as a resource hub for advocacy, education, and best practices. While our focus is Oregon and Oregon issues, we realize that we have many issues in common across the country. We hope that this podcast will reach beyond the borders of our state to share ideas and solutions. If you have suggestions for topics or comments about any of our podcasts, send me an email at cityfocus@orcities.org. You can also follow us on Facebook and Twitter, and be sure to subscribe to this podcast and our weekly microcast Inside the Capitol to get notification when we publish new content.